Alright, so today we're going to cover pulling pistons out of a QR25, and what we have here is a QR25 that popped the head gasket. And after pulling the head gasket out here, if you want to look, we actually look here, and I don't know how well you guys can see, but there is some marks that are on top of the cylinder walls here. And so one of the concerns that we have is if there's some piston slap going on, or how deep these marks are, and if they're creating a blow-by issue for this motor. So to go a step further, what we're going to do is we're going to drop the oil pan out of the car today, and we're going to yank out these pistons. And in the process of doing that, we're also going to check out these cylinder walls, see here how far out around they are and if there's any taper on them. One of the other things we're going to do is we're going to look at the condition of the pistons themselves, and we're going to measure the pistons. And what we'll cover today is actually how to measure the pistons, how to measure the cylinder walls, how to get them straightened up, and how to hone them out. So we're going to get to work here and pull these oil pans off so that we can access the bottom of the motor, and we'll be back. Okay, so where we're at right now in the motor is we've actually started removing some of the accessories needed in order to access the lower oil pan. If you want to scan in here, one of the first things we started out by taking was the exhaust system, which was needed in order to remove that lower oil pan, because it does go across the lower pan there as well. And then if you want to swing down to the bottom here, I'll show you one of the necessary things that has to come out. For some of you guys will be running a lower tie bar, which will connect this control arm to the other control arm, sorry about that, from this control arm to the other control arm. So really you'll have to remove those control arms, and then as you can see here, we've removed the exhaust system so that we can access this upper oil pan. Now what you notice is we're actually missing, or we took out the strut, or not strut bar, but the cross member here that was needed as well. All these things interfere with us removing this, so they all have to come out. Now, a little trick that I like to do before I pull off that oil pan is I like to let the motor suspend, and then I'll drain the oil out, because you know we do have the motor at a tilt here, so we can kind of get some of that oil out of the way before we start by pulling this pan here, and then after that we'll undo this brace, and then we'll remove the upper oil pan and then let it drain down, and then we should be able to access the pistons and see the crank from this point. One of the nice things about doing this is we will have access at this point to the balance shafts, and we can either cut the chain or put a kit on if we had one. But with this particular motor, we're going to cut the chain and just remove it completely out of the way. We'll leave the balance shafts in place because of the oil pickup, and we don't have a spare spacer for it. But beyond that, we'll just cut the chain and get that freed up 5 to 7 horsepower, you know, as desired. Go. Okay, so welcome back. Now what we're at is we have the upper oil pan actually out of the way now, and it was a little bit tricky. These dowel pins, when we went to pull them out, these dowel pins were kind of rusted into that upper oil pan, and we ended up bending the dowel pins to get the oil pan out of the way. It's no big deal really, they're just there for alignment, they're not there for any other purpose than just to help you line up. But if you, I mean, there's a series of bolts here that will help us do the same thing, so really, in my opinion, they're kind of unnecessary. As you can see here, here's where the balance shaft actually sits, and for some of those who don't even know what this is basically a component that Nissan had put in to counteract vibration from the engine, and what it does is it spins opposite direction of the crankshaft. It's driven by a chain that's on this side. It's actually covered. I don't know if it can be seen or not, but what we'll do here is we'll drop the cover out of the way, we'll cut the chain out of the way, and that will disengage the balance shafts. And like I had said before, what I'll end up doing is, excuse me, I got some oil here. What I'll end up doing is it will free up 5 to 7 horsepower throughout the entire RPM band, and also give some free spinning power to the motor as well. After this, the next step, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this balance shafts out of the way here so that we can access piston number 1, because it does cover piston number 1, which is right here, and then we'll work our way all the way across into piston number 4. What we'll end up doing is we'll pull each one of them out, we'll check the bearings, we'll look at the cylinders, the condition of the cylinders, we'll re-hone them, measure them out, and make sure that they're to spec before we put in some new rings on the pistons, and we'll also inspect the pistons as well. So next step for us is to remove this balance shaft kit here, or not kit, but remove the balance shafts completely, and then we'll move on to the pistons.